Because now we're asking for people on September 18th to come here on national, come back to church, get back to church, go to church Sunday. We're asking them to come be a part of this church. So what should that look like? What should it look like? Several years ago, I read a book. I wish I wrote a book. I read a book called The Celtic Way of Evangelism. And it's the story of St. Patrick. Everyone knows about St. Patrick. It's more than just a holiday where you wear green and get drunk. Or you shouldn't be getting drunk. But there was actually a person named St. Patrick. Now they say he drove the snakes out of Ireland, and this book doesn't address that story. He's a real person, and he was a missionary. He was a Briton. And when he was a child, he was kidnapped by Irish pirates and taken to Ireland and sold into slavery. And he grew up as a slave in Ireland. And as he gets older and gets to young adulthood, he has an opportunity to escape his slavery. And he did. He got away from Ireland, he went back home to Britain, and he then trained to become a priest in the Roman Church. And he had almost kind of a Macedonian dream about going back to Ireland to reach the people of Ireland. Now you got to understand something. Ireland was considered not part of the civilized world by the Roman Church. For years they had been sending missionaries and establishing monasteries and churches in Ireland, and every one of them failed. They just couldn't do it. And so they had a hard time finding people volunteering to go and be missionaries to Ireland, because it was considered just the end of the road for a ministry. It was just considered too tough. It was considered something that just couldn't be overcome. The people were unreachable. The Irish people were barbarians. They could not understand the gospel, nor were they willing to understand it. But St. Patrick, it was so funny, because Patrick, when he had gotten there, even though he was a slave there, he developed a burden for the Irish people. And so he got back, he went and got his training to become a priest. He took some seminary students with him and some other, minor priests, associate ministers, and he went back to Ireland. And he built a church. And it flourished. Now understand, when Patrick went back, it was one of the most amazing things what he did. He redefined what church was in Ireland. See, all the Roman priests that went before him had built monasteries. Now anybody knows what the purpose of a monastery is? It's you build up walls to keep the world out. Patrick got there and he opened up the doors and he invited the world in. He went, and since he already knew the Irish language, he did something very controversial. He preached in their language. He threw out the Latin. He studied their stories. The Irish people were a people of stories. They were people of paradoxes. They loved, he knew that about them. And the story about the first shall be last and the last shall be first, it's a paradox. He preached that kind of thing to them, and they loved it. He learned their music. He purposed the church around reaching the Irish people. And the church exploded. He just didn't start one church. He started a multitude of churches. Word got back to the Roman church back in Rome that it's working. Patrick's doing something in Ireland. Churches are starting. People are flocking to them. So they sent a delegation to find out what was happening. What was Patrick doing? And they show up, and they were angered. They had a statement back then. We have cliches and statements we say today. They had it back then. There was a statement that was very popular back then. It was called, "Do church the Roman way." When they got back, they discovered Patrick was not doing church the Roman way. And they began their series of trying to get Patrick out of the Irish church because he was not doing it the Roman way. He was doing it the Irish way. Despite the fact that people were flocking to church, despite the fact that the doors of the monasteries were not there anymore, they were open, people were coming in, lives were being changed, miracles were being done, they were upset because they had an idea of what church should be like, and he wasn't doing it. It was more important that the Roman way be done than people be reached. You know, we look at today and you see people saying, how should church be done? You know what the most amazing thing about the Scripture? Jesus told us what to do. He didn't tell us how to do it. He said go. He didn't say go in an airplane, go in a car, go on a bicycle. He said go. See, the world is changing. Some of us may not like the idea that the world is changing, but the world is changing. There's a humorous thing that I came across that I'd like to kind of go over with you. Every year they come out with a thing called the Mind List. Has anybody ever heard of the Mind List? It talks about how the generations coming up are different from the past generations. And this is, I thought